back with another video about this topic that I had promised a really long time ago. So I have to apologize. If you watched my first video about my head house, and then I said I'm going to be doing it, I'll be doing a series on this to go more in depth, and then I never did. It wasn't like I gave up on it. I just got into a mental health sort of crisis at the beginning of this year. And I just couldn't talk about like that particular part of my mind. I know that sounds goofy and kooky and weird, but there you have it. Wow, I look really red on here. I think I'm really red because I'm having a fibroflare. Fibromyalgia, it's fantastic. I should do a video about that. So I want to talk to you about the head house, and particularly in this installment, the writing room. Last time we talked about what my head house is like overall. I really highly recommend watching the first video. That's down in the drop bar below there. Because it's just too much to recap, but basically it's sort of like a memory palace if you're familiar with the concept from Sherlock, if you're familiar with the concept from Thomas Harris's books about Hannibal Lecter. If you understand all that stuff, then you kind of have a clue. But I highly recommend watching the first video before you do this one. So the last time we talked about it, I said you should go and you should try to see the first room in your head house. You should just sort of take time to meditate and visualize it. So if you did, that's fantastic, because there's going to be more meditation and more visualization in this part. One of the things I mentioned last time was my word room. My word room in my head is probably the most important tool I use as a writer. You can sort of slot this one in with vision boards and Pinterest for inspiration in terms of it's a tool, but it could be detrimental if you are spending more time utilizing the tool than you are doing the writing. So I'll tell you that right now. This can absolutely work, by the way, for visual art, for really anything. Whatever you're passionate about, I'm sure you can make a room there. The first time I saw my word room, it was a complete shock. I was in my little main room of my head house, and suddenly there was a door. It was just out of nowhere, there's a door. And I went, that's weird, I wonder what's through that door. Because there was already another door, and then there was the door with all the pile of junk in front of it that I've talked about. But there was a door that was not obstructed. And I thought, well, I'm gonna go through that door. So I'm sitting there, I'm meditating, I go in through the door, and it is like a beautiful like grotto. It's like a cave, but there were stained glass windows in part of the cave, sort of, that was letting in this colorful and beautiful light. And at the front of the cave, it was this huge natural spring type thing, like just like a basin of water made out of rock. So cool, right? I walked up to it. Now there were like vines hanging from the ceiling, and I walked up to the front of this grotto, and there's this big thing, this big pool of water, and a dipper. And when I dipped into the water, when I pulled it up, it was full of words. There was a big like whiteboard, like a magnetic type whiteboard. It looked completely out of place in its surroundings, and it's still there. It's like a, you know, those movable chalkboards kind of, but it's a whiteboard. And I just flung the words in the dipper onto the thing and was rearranging the words and having such a good time. Over time I would go into the word room and I would notice little things like changes. At the time that I first discovered the word room, I was writing, I think it was my final Blood Ties book. It was like a long time ago. And when I finished writing the book, I noticed there were suddenly in this grotto, when you first entered, you walked down this long sort of expansive cave. And now it was like halfway up was kind of like cracked and charming stone garden walls, and they had outdoor spigots sticking out of them, and each one of the little spigots had a sign hanging over it, like just hanging from it, and it would have the name of a project. Well, I had these Light World, Dark World books coming up, and I had 3 things there for Light World, Dark World 1, Light World, Dark World 2, Light World, Dark World 3. Then over here, there was my one for my final book that I was just wrapping up in the Blood Ties series. And I went over to it and I turned the tap on and filled it up with water, and I took the water and I threw it on the whiteboard, and there was, you know, words in it, and it was this whole thing. Well, when I finished the book, shortly after that, I was meditating. I went into my word room, and the spigot, the little, you know, where the water would come out, was rusted for that book. It was rusted, nothing else would come out because the book was done. After a while, it disappeared. Anytime I would get an idea, a new idea, I would find new spigots down this row. And then sometimes, if I didn't do anything with the idea, I'll go back and it's rusted shut. And to me, that's a sign that, okay, I missed my chance. I could have gotten the project out. I could have done this, but it didn't work out. Last year, I had a really hard time writing. And the beginning of this year, I had a really hard time writing. And so when I would go into my word room, in my meditations, suddenly it was a mausoleum. There were no spigots, and if there were, I wouldn't have used them because it's in a mausoleum, what's going to come out? There were tombs with names of past books inscribed on them, and, you know, with, you know, it's some blank ones, as though every project I was going to have coming up was going to die. That is not a great feeling as a writer. You don't want to think that you're never going to finish a project. You don't want to think that, you know, your career is over. But when you walk into your word room and it's like suddenly that fount isn't there, or like all of those words aren't there, and the whole thing is a mausoleum, like a Victorian era with like the white walls and the tile floor, and then like the glass ceiling with, you know, that's not what you want to see as a writer. As I started getting better, now when I go into the word room, like last month, you know, when I'd be meditating, I would go into the word room, and it's not like so much a mausoleum anymore. It's still got, it's like, now it's sort of like subway tiles from like the London Underground, so it's sort of like caught in between, like an in-between phase or something, where there's still something vaguely mausoleum-ish about it, but it could also be a subway. The taps are back, and the front part has now, you know, returned and is a grotto again. So it's kind of, and the last time I was in there, there were vines that were sort of reclaiming all the tile. So I think it's all going to be back to normal now that I'm in a more mentally healthy place. But that's a good place for you to go and check out if you are stuck, or if you're having a bad mental health thing and it's affecting your writing. Check in on the health of your word room. Sometimes you can change things. If you walk in there and it looks like something terrible is happening, you can actively, like, in your mind go, okay, say this tap is rusted shut, and I really did want to write that book, but now the tap is rusted shut. You're in charge of that whole thing. So you can go to yourself, hey, suddenly in my hands, I have a rag, I have polish, I can take this rust away, and look at, now it works. So how do you set up your word room? This is a really exciting thing to do if you don't have a word room yet, if you're just now starting to create your little head house. The next time you meditate, if you've already done the meditation where you've checked out what it looks like inside, the next time you meditate, when you go in there, look for a door. That's your first step. If there isn't a door there, in that meditation or that visualization, what you're going to do is you're going to say to yourself, this is a perfect place for a door. That's the perfect place for my word room to show up. And you're just going to keep coming back to it until you've got the door there. Now you might go into this visualization and there might already be a door there. So now let's go from the door. You're visualizing, you see the door, there's the door there. I want you to go through the door. Now, if I had a more soothing voice and nature and general overall gentleness, I could do this as a guided visualization, but I can't because I have an abrasive and annoying voice. So you're just gonna have to remember all this on your own. You're gonna go through the door, and then when you're in there, the first thing you're gonna see, the first impression you get, that's what it looks like. Don't try to have an image in your mind of what it's going to look like. You need to know what your mind already has planned and where your mind is already storing your ideas and your creativity. So the first time you go into your word room, the first impression you get is probably what your word room is, and is probably the way that your needs are being met by your subconscious right now. All right, your subconscious and your spirit, sort of like in concert. Maybe it looks like a cave like mine. Maybe it looks like a library. Maybe it's an orchard where you can be picking words off the trees. Maybe it's completely underwater, like it's Atlantis or something. Wherever it is, go in there. Go in, explore, look around, find where your words are. While my words might be associated with water and being able to dip the water out or whatever, your words might be associated with, like I said, if it's a library, maybe you walk in and you open the books and the books are full of just random words. Maybe you walk in and your word room is a movie theater that's showing the movie of your book in your head, or the movie of your story or whatever you're writing, and the words are written out along the bottom of the screen. You know, sometimes you can get really good things that pop in through your word room that when you're done with your visualization, you go, I have to write that down. Be sure you have a notebook nearby. That is absolutely crucial with this exercise, because when you're done visualizing, you're gonna have all this stuff in your head and you're gonna want to write it down. As you continue to do this, like maybe the first couple of times, you should be really focusing and concentrating on exploring your word room. Not necessarily that you should be changing things, moving things, shaping things. Your word room should be probably, you know, static for a little while you get the hang of it. After a while, you can start changing things around. Let's say I go into my word room and I don't like the lighting. Maybe I can change the lighting. You can change things anytime you want. I'm just saying that getting the hang of it, getting the layout of it is probably, just understanding how it works is probably a better bet right off the bat. My word room in my head house has been absolutely indispensable for me in terms of how I shape my stories, how I imagine my scenes, how I connect with my characters, because sometimes I can walk in there and if I'm struggling with a scene, sometimes I can go into my head house and go, you know what, I'm gonna walk through that door and my character's gonna be in there and I'm gonna get to talk to my character and we're gonna hash this out together during this meditation. All of that stuff is available to you, okay? And like I said, this works for anybody. You could have an art room where you walk in and you see an art gallery of all your paintings or all the projects you want to do. Maybe there's a sculpture you're having a hard time with and you walk in and there's your sculpture on a plinth and it says, hey, this is what you're missing. This is what I have in me that you're not bringing out. It's absolutely limitless. So hopefully this will help those of you who are writers. Hopefully if you're a different kind of creative, you can adapt this. Hopefully it gave you some ideas. I think I had said I was going to talk about something different in the second video than this, but I thought that if people are using this just as a writing exercise and they're not necessarily into the whole spiritual woody-woo, they might just be like, okay, well, I saw what I wanted to see with the word room and I can get off in the second video, and that's fine. But going forward, I think I'm going to talk next time about the passage to spirituality type room. There's no other word for it. It's you'll just have to watch the third video if you're curious as to what that means, and then it'll probably make sense. When I say it's the passage to spirituality room, you'll be like, no, that's absolutely the only thing you can call it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, I'm gonna have more of them. It's gonna be easier for me to do them because I'm feeling a lot better. I'm not quite so crazy as I was at the beginning of the year. Like, subscribe, leave a comment if you do this exercise. Let me know how it went for you. I hope it's really helpful. So, thank you and see you next time.